All right, so this video, we are going to go over the big reveal. So for your next project, you are going to be working with the theme nature. So this video here is to kind of give you a context and an idea and help you start to get inspired for your project. So this is it, nature and stuff and things. So what we want to think about is the theme is nature. What is nature? So take a minute and think about what you would consider to be nature. What is nature? What isn't nature? So the definition we're going to be working is that the nature is the physical world and everything in it, such as plants and animals, mountains, oceans, stars, etc. That's not made by people. So we're going to go through a couple examples. We're going to be looking at ideas and things that you might want to consider for your project. So again, the theme is nature, and here's your objective. Your objective for this project is to create a work of art where the subject is based on or constructed from nature. So that actually gives you a little bit of wiggle room. Some of the questions we're going to be considering is how do artists create implied texture? How do artists use texture to enhance their work? So if you remember back to the elements of art that we began with at the start of the semester, texture is one of those components that we see in artwork. Standards and learning targets. What we're looking at is the idea that I develop skills. So in this project, I will incorporate new skills and or techniques into my work. So not only are we working with this theme and trying to communicate nature or things about nature, but we are really focused on incorporating new skills or techniques into your artwork. So we've already started to explore a little bit about that because we've learned about watercolor and we've learned about color pencil. But there are going to be other skills and techniques that you are going to need to learn about and develop in order to make this artwork successful. So here's our vocabulary for the unit. We're going to be talking about texture, the visual and physical properties, how the surface of something looks and feels. Sometimes the texture can be actual, so it feels just as they appear. And sometimes it can be implied. It looks like something it is not. So if I were to have a piece of artwork that had a lot of texture in it, and if I actually touched it, it has that same texture, then that's actual. If I have a piece of artwork that looks like it feels like something, but if I actually touch it, it does not feel like that, that is implied. The other big idea we're working with for your composition or how you arrange your artwork is the idea of a foreground, middle ground, and background. So when those terms come up, we're going to go over them more, but these are all things that I expect to see in your final artwork and the vocabulary we'll be using to talk about it. So let's look at some examples. So here are all examples of texture. Texture, if we look at any of these, they look like they feel. If we're looking at, let's say, this one right here, it looks like it feels like bark on a tree. However, the actual artwork maybe is a photograph and it doesn't feel like that. So it would be implied. Here's a good representation of implied. It is a drawing of wood grain. So that is something that is implying that texture. It isn't actually that texture. But there's so many textures in the natural world. Well, this one right here isn't quite natural. That is like asphalt. So that's not part of the natural world. And yet there are so many textures around us. to consider and think about for this assignment. Here we have other ways that artists have depicted texture. Very famously, Albrecht Dürer in this drawing of a hare. So what the artist is doing is very masterfully drawing or implying the fur of that hare. And we can see other animals also show texture. And what I want you to notice, each one of these, the line used to create the texture is different because the texture it's implying is different. So this cat feels in real life differently than this dog and that rabbit and that cat. So each artist here chose a different line to represent a different type of implied texture. Again, we can see other textures. Let's say we take an insect and we really study and observe up closely. We can see that, let's say, a bee, for instance, is different than a cicada. The texture of a bee actually kind of has this little furry stuff along his body. And then the cicada's body is much more smoother. So those are different textures and different things you would want to consider when you are recreating a piece of artwork that has texture in it. So here's more artworks that show texture in the natural world. So we have this owl where a painting background has been added, and there's drawing and painting kind of incorporated equally throughout the piece. This is an artist named Ryan Kirby. He deals a lot with the natural world. So we can see we have this group of turkeys and we have the place or the background, the forest that they are. So let's start to think about right now what is in the foreground, what's closest to us. This guy right up here, or girl. What's in the middle ground? So probably this turkey here, maybe these two here, and then what's in the background? So we have all of this forest back here in the background. Here we have Heather Brown. She has a very different style. And style is going to be another thing that we discuss when we go further on. But what I want you to see is that she has established this scene. So this would be considered a landscape or a seascape. The subject matter is nature. This is the natural world around us. And she is using a foreground, these flowers here, a middle ground, this ocean here, and then background. So she has these layered, and whatever is on top in this piece is overlapping these other pieces. That is the foreground. And then as we go back farther in space, then we get to the middle ground and the background. Here's a student artwork where we have this lion, the lion head, and then we have some, I would say these pink flowers are in the middle ground, and then we have these leaves in the background. So again, this is that theme of nature, foreground, middle ground, background. All right, so that's just an introduction to your theme. What your job is now to do today is to begin planning for your project. So I am going to conclude this video. In the next video, I'm going to show you what you're actually doing for your assignment. So I will see you in the next video.